So here we are. It's 7 o'clock, and I always like to start these things on time, and for all the people who have already joined. So thank you very much, everybody. We're really excited at our first webinar with the amazing Geza Schoen. We are here tonight to celebrate Molecule Plus, which is an incredibly exciting collection, a very, very clever innovation of Geza's. Just before you came on, we were discussing how Geza and I did an Instagram live about 9 months ago. We never really expected that 9 months later we would still be having to do Instagram lives and webinars and things, but there you go. But I think we can safely say that during lockdown, Geza has not been idle, because you've brought out this collection of three fragrances based around Molecule, the amazing cult global blockbuster sensation that is Molecule 1. So I want to just start. You've all got your smelling kits at home. I am very fortunate because I have a life-size smelling kit to turn to, which is very exciting. But I think before we go into the smelling session and some questions, I would like you, Geza, to explain where you got this flash of inspiration to launch, Molecule plus plus plus.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. We kind of fell into it just because I noticed that my partner Sophie, that she would really have a sweet spot for iris fragrance. Whenever I was working on fragrances and I would show her sometimes what I'm working on, she would always pick the ones which had an iris note. So at some point I said, I think you particularly like this. And then I showed her the ingredients and she loved them and thought they were so sophisticated and beautiful. So she said, why don't you make me an iris fragrance? And I said, sure, why not? So I then thought, because iris, unlike sort of other florals, if you want to put iris into the floral category, is very fragile and very subtle. So it's not overpowering. And it's more sometimes an effect in a fragrance than that you can actually benefit from a big amount of iris in it, because iris is very expensive. So it's very likely that this will always be enhanced with synthetics, which is nothing wrong with it. But so I then thought, okay, how do I start this? So I thought, I can't put anything really strong next to it, because then again, like in all the other fragrances we've smelled with an iris note, it gets overlaid by other, most likely more powerful ingredients. So I thought, I want to keep that as transparent and fresh and modern and light as possible. So I just started with, like 75% of IC Super and put next to that my iris accord, which I had made, consisting of a big portion of Iris Absolue Pallida, which is probably the most expensive ingredient we have right now.
It's the most expensive perfume ingredient.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful quality from LMR, from Laboratoire Monique Remy, which is wonderful. I mean, they just simply make the best natural raw materials. So I had access to this, and I added a big chunk of IC Super next to my iris base, if you like, and gave it to Sophie. And she started wearing it, and she was inundated with compliments and comments on how nice she would smell. So I then thought, that's great. And then one day I sort of encountered it when I remember we both left the house. I dropped Anna at the kindergarten and came back, and she must have just left a few minutes before me. And then I smelled her on the pavement, if you like, on my way into the house to the elevator. And then the fragrance was just like omnipotent in the air. It had such a beautiful sillage. The projection was amazing. And I thought, God, this really smells damn good. And sent a bottle to my partners in London, and they had similar experiences then later with that. So then I thought, listen, guys, I think we need to do something with this. And by simply looking at the formula, I realized, well, this is just nothing else really but molecular one with an iris note. So this is when M+ was born. obviously all based on molecular one with one extra ingredient or a category, if you like. So that's how, then Iris, Patchouli was second, and then the third one was M plus Mandarin at the end.
So how long ago was it that you made that first fragrance for Sophie?
That's probably maybe 1.5 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's quite quick, actually. I mean, to come up with a collection of 3 fragrances from an idea to market is fairly quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, you know, the fragrances, I didn't work for months and months on those simply because they are still very simple concoctions. You know, both the Iris and the Patchouli, they have not even 10 ingredients in the formula, so they're very basic, but overall they are very pretty, I find, and very attractive and very modern and light and airy, and I think that really suits right now. So yeah, that's how it happened.
It's interesting though, because you know, when you work for a client, the cutoff point is perhaps when the client says, yes, we love it, we're finished. As a perfumer, is it harder to judge what that point is? Is that where your partners in London kind of come in? Are they the ones that go, yeah, it's perfect, or no, that's not how it works?
No, that's I mean, that's ultimately my decision. My partners are you know, they have their strengths and other skills in different disciplines. But yeah, of course, I mean, I would always share my latest sort of base where I would stand and send them over samples, and so we would smell together, if you like. But there is, you know, with something like that, there comes a point when, yeah, of course, I could work on that for the rest of my life and always sort of fine tune and chisel and kind of have a go at it and on and off. But what I smelled when Sophie started wearing this, I mean, it just smelled fantastic. I would not have thought what else to add. And again, I was just trying to make an iris fragrance here where you can actually really smell the iris note and not have all of that other stuff next to it or overlaying it. So I think I had nothing more than 9 bases. So 9 times I changed the formula or added stuff I had found was good with it. So that's unusual. That's fairly quick.
Absolutely. So we want, obviously, a very important part of this evening is for people to smell along with Geza, basically. So what we'd like everybody to do now is to open your kits if you haven't done already, and to first smell the iris, which I'm going to reach for. I think we're going to do them in the order. Oh no, actually, sorry, I'm lying. I've redone it. Geza, yes. I've redone it because I thought maybe we should start with the Mandarin, then the iris, then the patchouli, because if you like, that's kind of by way of a top note, a heart note and a base note. So actually we'll do the Mandarin first of all. So everybody get their sample of Mandarin. I am going to spray this on my skin because I like it. I like all of them. And I want you to talk about what this is, and you know, of all the materials that you could have added to Molecule, what made you pick Mandarin? What is it you love about it?
Mandarin is the 3rd fragrance of the series. I noticed myself at some point, I thought, oh, we got iris now, that works fantastic. Patchouli is such a subtle, beautiful bomb in the air. So I thought that's a base note, obviously. So why not add a top note? And then I looked at the Escentric fragrances and kind of realized that we've never really done anything with Mandarin in sort of a big portion to any of the Escentric fragrances. So I started playing with Mandarin as a subject, and worked similarly well if you compare it to the others, but it had different requirements because Mandarin obviously is a top note. So I picked one of the beautiful Mandarin oils from LMR with around 12%, I think. But that on its own, just next to IC Super, is a little lost. So Mandarin isn't one of the most, powerful essential oils. It's very transparent.
Long, does it? It doesn't last long on the skin, really.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really like a top note. And so therefore, as beautiful as it is, but I felt I need to do something to this. So otherwise the Mandarin would just really be gone within minutes and you wouldn't have anything on skin. So I kind of touched it up with lots of other ingredients. Mandarin is by far the longest formula. This has got nearly 20 ingredients, which is still short if in comparison to like an industrial fragrance, but nothing else was needed than a Mandarin oil note, which would work next to Icy Super. So I added some traces of other ingredients for the top, for the very top, if you like. I added some to make the Mandarin note last a little longer, to bring it a little more into the heart, if not to the dry down. And that was by far the most work for all the three fragrances to get the Mandarin note right.
No, it's absolutely beautiful. Is it a green Mandarin or is it an orange Mandarin?
It's more an orange Mandarin. I tried to put emphasis on the fruity part as well as on the zesty note. Whenever you peel a Mandarin, so most likely you stick your finger in the middle and then start filling around, and instantly it's in the air. It's sort of fruity. It's almost exotic, and the zesty note I felt was very important to get this right. So yeah, it's not that green actually. It's more like zesty, fruity, aromatic.
I think what would be really nice is, as people are smelling this, I've just seen one comment from Caroline, which she says, so delicious, simultaneously reminds me of Christmas and summer holidays. So if any of you would like to put your comments in the chat box, I can read a few of those out, because I'm sure Geza would like the feedback, like to hear what people are thinking, because actually these have literally just gone on sale. So that's another reason we're so thrilled to have you here tonight. This is a real exclusive. So Northumbria University says it's uplifting and joyful. And I think it's delightful summer holiday, happy, uplifting memories. And that really is it, isn't it? I mean, I think it's a wonderful fragrance for this time, because I think all of us now are craving things that just lift us up. I mean, when it comes to food, I know personally I want spicy things. I want strong flavors. I need something to stimulate me. And do you think that's what this does?
Yeah, definitely. This is, let's say, the happiest of the three because of this boost, zesty top note that makes you smile, definitely. The other two are certainly more perfumistic in that sense, that they border more, iris within what it became. And the patchouli, obviously, we all know, because we all know patchouli notes like from decades ago, and maybe even our parents sort of wearing them in the 70s. So Mandarin is the most joyful. I would totally agree.
That's a word that some of the viewers are watching, who are watching, are saying. Juicy and freshly sweet, unexpectedly quite green, says Natasha. And I like this from RG. It says, reminds me of sunny days and summer holidays, and we are all, sunny days and cool drinks, and I think we're all dreaming of those. And someone else says, sunshine in a bottle, and I am longing to wear this with a summer dress and a summer breeze. Yes, please, soon come. So we've talked a little bit about the iris. If people want to get their iris fragrance out, I shall grab mine from the shelf, also put it on my skin. What would you tell people, Geza, to look for in this fragrance? What are the qualities of the iris that you think you've brought to the fore?
I think just right now, as I've just spritzed it myself very freshly, it's got an unusual earthiness, and that's what iris holds for you when it's very interesting when you're working on a fragrance and you have one trial without iris and the other one has iris. It's kind of a magic ingredient. It's very it adds sophistication, it adds a powdery note to the fragrance. It will make it better in 95% of the cases, I think. That's my experience. And it's just I'm sure if you would show iris as it is on the street to people, no one would really get it, but yeah. It's sort of like, it's kind of like a very expensive, exotic, exclusive wonder ingredient. And so by using 2.5 parts here of this Iris Absolue Pallida in my formula, which is quite high and very expensive, I managed to drag even some of that iris note right into the top note. So straight away when you smell it,
smells straight away of iris. I have a question about iris. Does it have the effect? I've always imagined that it sort of also smooths things. I always find that iris fragrances have a kind of a softness, like someone's been over them with a chamois leather, you know.
Absolutely, totally agree. It brings in a powdery, almost like transparent, creamy, earthy naturalness, which is surprising, yet it smells sophisticated. It smells very elegant. And again, here by just having an enormous amount of molecular one sitting next to this iris base, it's just unusual, because normally you would always have lots of other things around it. And here it's pretty naked. So there's this iris base next to Isu Super. And I think it smells really, it's so airy and light, and it has something unusual floral in there, which you can't really get your hand on it. No, I mean, this is my favorite, not because I started working on that. That is probably one reason. And I was just able to watch how beautiful that smells on the skin and how much it goes. I mean, the projection of this is fantastic. And so, yeah, the iris one is probably out of the three, the most modern and elegant one, I would say.
It's probably also the most expensive to make, isn't it?
Yeah, by far.
Oh. Yeah. I thought you might like to hear some of the comments that people have said. I smell a powdery Parma violet kind of smell. Smells like a heady afternoon in the garden. Someone has said that there's something creamy and nutty about it. I kind of know what they mean. You know, I tell you what, I'm just going to literally, I thought I could see my spectacles. I can't. So I'm just going to have to squint at the chat box. Never mind. Somebody says, not as powdery as she was expecting. And I agree, actually. Some iris fragrances can seem very powdery and a little bit old-fashioned. And obviously the signature of Everything Molecule is that they're utterly contemporary.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the things I really wanted to avoid, because otherwise that's pointless. I mean, we've all smelled iris as it's traditionally used in fragrances next to lots of other ingredients. And yes, it sometimes it can come across as a bit old-fashioned. And that's why I think I clearly avoided that effect and brought out this this earthiness of the Iris Absolue, which is, I mean, this quality is like, unlike most other irises, natural ones, which come as a concrete or like sort of a resin, sort of a fat, a butter, if you like. This is liquid. So this is probably, I guess it's like probably a CO2 extraction. So they really can concentrate this to the utmost largest amount of ingredients you actually want, because that's what you want from the iris. You want the earthiness and the powdery aspect. And usually, I mean, the industry just simply couldn't do that just because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Which is not a hindrance for us. We look for beautiful sort of solutions. Otherwise, I would never find a point to actually launch something. There are so many hundreds and thousands of fragrances, and we are launching another 3, but for a particular reason, I think, together with the lightness of molecular one.
Well, I mean, it never stops people with a successful fragrance from launching flankers. I would never call these flankers, But when you have got people who love a particular smell, as so many people do, Molecule 01, you know, you want to mix it up a bit sometimes. So you've given people the opportunity to do so.
Look, this is completely out of my hand. I mean, obviously I still like the idea that we do offer now not just the molecules for the ultimate singular linear sensation, and we have the eccentrics, which are the fragrances, but now M+ is obviously in between for the molecular one lovers who maybe sometimes want one additional thing with it to wrap themselves in. And it's, I mean, look, we never plan to do something only because the shops ask us, you know, can you bring out more products or can you do this or that? We never do that unless we really have something where we feel this is really extraordinary. And like in this case, we felt we have to launch this.
And I'm hoping that Sophie doesn't resent the fact that you've now shared her favorite perfume with the world.
No, I mean, you know, obviously she's made a few funny comments about that, but no, this is, you know, when you live with a perfumer, tough shit, you have to accept that.
And now I think, because I want to leave some time for questions afterwards, we have some questions written down, and we also have, I think we can, especially if I can find my glasses, we can take some questions live for the audience. And in fact, I will just ask a question that we had in. I think it's a good point to ask a question from Megan Brown, who sent this question in earlier. Just to revisit what it was that gave you the inspiration to bottle Molecule 01 in the first place.
Oh, that was easy. That all happened, I can tell you exactly, in 1990. So what, now 31 years ago, I started becoming sort of an apprentice, or I think you call this an elective placement, where you're not working, but sort of you're looking into how this company worked. So I had 1.5 years of sort of getting to know this whole company at the time, Harman and Reimer. And they gave me an office where I had most of all the ingredients in there and the scale. So I was able to play autodidactically just for myself. That was very cool. And I encountered IC Super and I thought, God, this is something, you know, because back then I'd only known IC Super from fragrances which were in the market. And so I bottled a little thing of that in a small bottle, went home over the weekend to my hometown, which was close. And I gave it to this friend of mine. We went to this bar. He had 1 drop here, 1 drop there. And we just stood around for like 10 minutes before this lady turned up right in front of us and said, "Who smells so nice here?" And so my friend Michel at the time said, "Oh, it's probably me, but you have to talk to him." And so I talked to her and kind of came out that the fragrances she liked was Fahrenheit and Tresor. And they're really 2 absolutely opposite fragrances. They've got nothing in common, but IC Super. Fahrenheit's got 25%, Tresor has around 20%. Wow. So, you know, and then the more I had an insight into perfumes, how they were made. And, you know, one of the things you do as a trainee is you make imitations of classical perfumes. Yeah, you know, you start working on Dracax or on Opium and all the big ones to see why these fragrances became classics and why they stand out. So it came clear to me that this is something special. It's not just an ingredient. And the next step was in 94. So I had only been in the education for 2 years. We got a chance to work on the first diesel fragrance. Mm-hmm. And so we gave them fragrances and they smelled them and they liked some and didn't others. And I thought Diesel, you know, back then there was the coolest company in the world when it came to fashion. They had the wickedest sort of advertising campaign and they were really far out. So I said to the sales guy, I said, "Why don't you just take IC Super? Just show it to them, see what they think." And even he said back then, "I think that's even for Diesel a bit far-fetched." So at first I wasn't too happy because I thought this idea is great. And I mean, in hindsight, that would have worked for Diesel as well as for any other company in the world, because people would have always liked that as a singular note, I guess. So that was 94, and I just took the idea with me. I mean, I became a perfumer. I worked in several countries on the planet in different perfumery environments. And then in 2005, I thought, you know, still no one's done that. I'll just do it myself. And then found these partners, and then we just did it and filled in a garage this product. What has to be added, though, in the meantime, that's very important. I'm in touch with probably one of the most famous researchers when it comes to trying to identify how we physically and biochemistry, sort of how this all works, how we smell. And one of the things he told me at the time was they are checking out how a singular molecule how a singular cell reacts if you inject the tiniest amount of an aroma chemical into a singular cell. Oh, really? So I thought, that's really mad, and what an idea. And I said, what have you been testing so far? So he showed me a list, and they were all the sort of the standard, most simple ingredients which appear in all natural oils, you know, the geraniols and the citronellols and the limonenes and all of this. And I said, so what happened to the cells? How do they respond? And he said, yeah, not much. And I said, well, you know, you must take some of the cooler ingredients, which actually really smell more interesting. And I gave him some of those, among IC Super. And then a couple of months later, I called him. I said, what happened when, you know, you injected viciously IC Super into a singular cell? And he said, the cell started to dance. So now I thought, well, that's fantastic. I mean, what a comment to get. And then they did further tests and then found out that IC Super actually, in fact, does stimulate one of our 5 remaining pheromone receptors.
Okay.
And that really bridged it all and brought it all together, because I think that makes sense, and that explains to me why someone on the street would run after someone who's be wearing this product. And really, like, there's an animal magnetism about it, which is beyond, you know, which is beyond the sheer olfactoric presence, which IC Super has as well. But it was this extra bit which I think got this going.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I suspect that Diesel would have kind of launched it and not really, I don't suppose they would ever have had the success that you've had with it, because the next year they would have brought out something else and then something else. But I think what you were so clever with was just making something of the fact this is one thing in a bottle and it's very special. So we are going to go on to now smell the patchouli. Now, I am going to spray this all over because I am a complete patchouli holic. And it's my husband and I both love patchouli. And it may amuse you, Geza, to know that in the 1960s, my husband actually, he had a natural food business, and it had a natural food wholesaler. It had 8 items on the list. He sold to a lot of hippies. One of them was brown rice, one was aduki beans, one was miso, one was tamari, and one was patchouli oil. So patchouli and I go back a long way, and patchouli and my husband go back a long way. But what I love myself, so everybody, have you I'm hoping you're smelling the patchouli now. What I love about this is that a lot of, I know you've used a molecule, I think it's been fractionated, but to give you a certain profile of the ingredient, which we can talk about, but you haven't taken away the dirty bit. You've left the dirty bit, which to me is what patchouli is all about.
Absolutely. When I started working on this accord, it was, I mean, first, maybe something to patchouli. I mean, until probably maybe 10, 12 years ago, there was patchouli oil in perfumery. That was it. Different patchouli oils from different regions, from Indonesia, and some were a little more expensive than others. But patchouli overall is quite a cheap, natural, essential oil in comparison to some of the others we use. But then all of a sudden, they were able to fractionate it in the sense that they cut off the top note. And the top note of patchouli was always the one thing which made it more difficult to use it, because yes, you had the beautiful dry down of the patchouli, but then it had this top note of borneol and camphor, which smell both quite medicinal. So, but all of a sudden we had a new product, if you like, because you didn't have to fight this top note anymore in a fragrance. So for Molecule plus Patchouli, I used 5% of a fractionated patchouli oil from LMR called Patchouli Hard.
Yeah.
But then I thought, hang on, I'm doing an M plus patchouli, so I can't, or I don't want to really go without the top note entirely. So I added another 25 parts of a regular patchouli oil to again touch it up a bit and do actually have a little bit of the patchouli top note. But the more patchouli in there is actually the one which brings you the effect you.
So you've changed the proportions of it in a way. You've changed the proportions of the patchouli. And can you just explain for anybody who doesn't know, and in fact, I need to know this myself, as I understand it, fractionation, is it done with the centrifuge where you spin certain ingredients, certain elements out? How does it work? How do you fractionate?
You know what? I have absolutely no idea. I'm so delighted and grateful that we have access to these ingredients, but the chemical side of it, how to get these two, the borneol and the camphor out of it, I have no idea. It's, see, it's something which I should be able to explain that, but no one's ever explained it to me, and neither have I ever asked. So I will find out. But to me, really, most important is that the product exists and that you can now have a much easier access to patchouli for fragrances where you wouldn't be able to use patchouli in the first place, just because you would always have this medicinal top note.
Somebody says here, I'm not a huge patchouli essential oil fan, but this is gorgeous. You've left the part of patchouli which I love and taken away the part I dislike. Works for me. Genius. Someone says would be great on a man. Obviously, all of your fragrances, I mean, I imagine actually the iris would smell amazing on a man's skin. Yeah,
sure. Why not? I mean, if I were to categorize them in sort of the old sense, I would think that probably the patchouli leans over a little bit over the edge towards the masculine side of things. And the iris clearly, to me, is more the, you know, slightly over the feminine side, as where the Mandarin, I think, is completely unisex. It's, you know, so if we were to categorize this a little bit, I think that's the one I would do.
One question I think we need to know is are there going to be more? I mean, are there going to be more Molecule Plus ultimately?
Absolutely, yes. We have already 2 more in the pipeline, both very aromatic, very flavorful, yet fresh and transparent. I'm actually thrilled that we have found already 2 more, which we have in the process to then be launched probably next spring.
Okay. Well, these for now are going to keep us going. I have some more questions that people have already sent in. What impact do you think that AI, artificial intelligence, will have on the perfume industry in the coming years?
I mean, I know that Symrise, they have started some AI project where they boast about the fact that the computer will do modifications or will suggest sort of changes to a fragrance. But to be honest, I mean, sure, I mean, for sure we will have computers in the future who will be able to write a book by themselves. But, you know, the soul is pretty much left out here, because the skill to actually work a fragrance through from the idea to the finished product is what a perfumer traditionally is good for, and that's what he does. I think even if I would have access to that system, to say, oh, I'll let the computer do my trials here. I mean, this is where hopefully, you know, the handwriting of each perfumer actually comes then into play, where it's about, you have a good idea, and how do you, in what direction do you twist it? I mean, that is one of the fun parts to do, and to say, well, we give that off as well into the hands of a computer. I have absolutely no interest, to be honest.
For me, it's hard to understand how they could possibly, I can see how technically it might work, but what they would be producing for me is a fragrance for a robot, rather than a fragrance that, you know, evokes emotions and feelings, etc. I don't know that AI is ever going to be able to bring that dimension to fragrance.
Listen, I think the more we look into sort of big data and other, well, technical requirements we have and can make use of, the more we will be able to, you know, yes, a computer will be able to suggest, oh yeah, I've looked at your formula, and why don't you try a bit of basil with some pink pepper or whatever. Sure, but I mean, this is exactly what I'm there for.
Yeah, exactly.
I would be very surprised if a perfumer really goes, oh, that's fantastic, you know, because then I only have to come up with an idea and then the computer does the rest. I find this ultimately boring. This is really, I mean, this would be the end of anything. You know, you could probably have a robot which paints a painting if you give it a brush, and, you know, and that robot could have all the thousands and thousands of paintings from the past in his head. But then where is the point where actually the soul is translated, or a concept, an original idea, like a chore that you will, you know, the artist will have to take the brush and get going and express whatever he or she wants to express. The idea that we incorporate computers with anything creative, I think, is absolutely stupid. And it brings us even more away from the fact that we, you know, everything will get automized and will be technically monitored. And I mean, yeah, at some stage we will just be sitting there like a couch potato in our seat and just press buttons or shout out, and then some machine will do it all for us. I don't find that too attractive, to be honest.
I don't find that too interesting either. So we have another question that somebody sent in advance, which I would love to talk to you about. When you start to develop a new fragrance, do you start with a plan or an ambition or an emotion? Or I'm adding to this question, are you just trying to put together things that smell great?
That, if that would be possible, that would be the easiest, because then you just have your palette of sort of stuff and throw them all next to each other and see what happens. No, I think I'm afraid to say that perfumery does, or has had, its history, and we've all had our socialization, if you like, growing up with certain scents we like or we have been surrounded with, and that is responsible for how we all individually deal with what we like or what we don't like. So therefore, you know, you sometimes need to have a certain combination of things and then base stuff on there. To just go, oh, I like Icy Super and Iris. Well, true, it worked out here. I mean, these are two of my, you know, maybe top 10 ingredients. But it was still a lot of work to get it right so that it wouldn't smell too bland and not come across as I said, sophisticated, modern, light and airy with a strong iris note. So yeah, I mean, you know, if you have a bad choice of ingredients as a perfumer, that probably isn't going to help. But if you have some which are your favorites, and then you have some other specials, and then you have your own way of, you know, bringing this across, so that you can, you know, there's some fragrances they get on the market, I can probably say who made these fragrances, because they have a certain handwriting.
Yeah.
And I find this very important, that you do have your experience, so you value the history of fragrances, and it doesn't quite work that you always sort of come up with something completely new, and where you also then have to, you know, the time to give it the time to maybe make this more present and let people try this, and maybe over years something will have sort of like its breakthrough. So it's you can't always streamline this idea.
So there is another question about Escentric Molecules. What do you see as the future for Molecule? Are you looking at home fragrance? I mean, obviously we're all at home all the time. and one day we hope to escape, but meanwhile we're all at home and we want it to smell nice. What do you look at that at all for your brand? No.
This is something, I mean, yeah, one probably could do that, but then I still like the idea that we are a fragrance brand. So most important is, yes, we produce juices which get into a bottle and you can spray them on your neck, and ideally you feel fantastic about that. I've always liked that, that you are looking forward to spray something on your neck and present yourself with an olfactoric fingerprint. This is like, this adds to your personality. So therefore, it was already a step to say yes to do a body wash. But then, a body wash is something, I mean, certainly lots of people use. You use shower gel and you use shampoo. So we thought we can combine these two and add the Escentrics to them. And we might even do more ancillary products one day, but now that we are also thrilled about the M+ idea, I think the focus is clearly on that. So a candle, I find this now cheesy is a bit hard, but I still like the idea.
And it disappoint Mel. Mel says, yes, please, candle and diffuser, but never mind. Mel, you're going to have to wait a bit longer. Yeah,
I'm afraid this is really not in the focus, because I like the idea that people wear our fragrances on skin and they don't, fragrance the air around them. So we focus on skin products, I'd say.
And this is nothing to do, Geza, with the fact that many perfumers have told me that it's much harder to make a candle than it is to make a liquid fragrance, because they've been described to me as sucking the life out of a fragrance.
Of course, that's true. There are some ingredients, they perform incredibly well in candle, but they are really bad on skin, and vice versa. The stuff which performs on skin doesn't necessarily mean it's going to perform on candle. So it's really the one way or the other. And if you want to make a good candle, you need to know about it. You just can't throw stuff in and think that'll do it. You always have to test them. It's really, it's mad.
Exactly. A question that's come up several times is, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but can you layer the molecules +1? What happens when you layer them?
You know what? I've never tried that, and simply because I don't want to. I mean, I think the task was, or let's say the goal for me was to give people something which is unusual. So this is when we made the molecules on their own. And yes, the Escentric is an homage to the molecule. That's what I've always said, how I would put the molecule, this particular one, best into a fragrance. And the M+ idea is just something which really comes in between for the molecular one lovers, but who want now and then something else. Look, I mean, who am I to dictate this? Whoever wants to layer M+ with something because he or she thinks that this is great, of course, go for it. I mean, as I said, I haven't tried that, but I know that lots of people layer molecular one with some other fragrances they wear, or God knows what else they do. Great. I mean, again, who am I to dictate that?
It's not smelling bad, but it is smelling dominantly currently of patchouli, which may just be what happens. Somebody has asked why it is that some people can't smell molecule 01.
Yeah, that's possible that some people just don't get it in their nose as others do. I mean, it is a very subtle molecule. It doesn't. It has no punch, if you like unlike other fragrance ingredients. But the good thing is it smells very subtle. It smells very beautiful. I think it's kind of velvety. It's cocooning. It's warm. There's an erogenous side to it. It's very sexy, and it's dry. It's nowhere near kitsch whatsoever. It's really sophisticated, and I think the expectation of people sometimes could be a bit too high, that when they smell that, when they go to a perfumery store, it's got like big top note and fruit and green and spice and sweet and God knows what else. And this is really quiet. It develops over time. If you spray that in the morning, people can still smell that on you in the evening. But it's something, the original idea was, I thought I had so many, you know, I had really cool friends back in the 80s when we all grew up and we were teenagers. And not a lot of my friends would wear a fragrance because all the fragrances back then were really strong and powerful and sweet and leathery and full on. And so some of my friends said, I'd rather wear no fragrance than this or this. So I thought it'd be cool if they would have an olfactoric identity, but with something which is subtle and quiet and, you know, it's not like an angel where whenever you enter a room, the room is full of the fragrance. That I didn't think was too attractive. So that's when I thought, you know, after this test I had done this bar, I mean, you know, after 10 minutes, the answer was clear that somebody will stop in a bar and ask you what he is smelling of. So I thought that was the initial idea. And that's why I see each bottle we do as an individual wearer, if you like.
In regard to the olfactory signature, there's a lovely comment here from Mel. I was shopping in Asda one day and I could smell Molecule the way it smells on my friend Steph. And no word of a lie, I banged into my friend 10 minutes later in the bread aisle. So it had left a signature in the air that her friend could recognize.
Yeah, that has happened to me, not only with Molecular 1, but also Molecular 2. I'll never forget, same bar actually in my hometown. A friend of mine wore Molecular 2 and I was able to smell him before I saw him, even though that was in the evening, and he sprayed it on in the morning, he said later. But it's just, it's hovering and it's airy and it's there. The projection is great. So is Molecular 1 and is Molecular 2. It's just, they're powerhouses, but very subtle powerhouses.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody has asked, I mean, I think we were supposed to do 45 minutes, but I think we should go to an hour, Geza.
Of course, no worries.
Yeah, perfect. Which is your personal favorite of your perfumes? And what would you wear most often? In fact, do you wear perfume?
Not very often. I'm sure anyone who's sort of participating here is wearing more fragrance than I am. But then sometimes, you know, when I work on fragrance, I spray it on my skin to see how it performs there. And then, you know, after my working day, I have no longing for smelling myself with a fragrance on. I'm very happy to then just go home and, you know, cook some food and enjoy the smell and the taste of food and onions sizzling in a pan. You know, I quite enjoy simple things like that. So this is why, I mean, the ones I have been wearing over the past 2 years is my Renegades, which is dominated.
Ones you did with Bertrand Duchaufour.
And Mark Buxton, exactly. So that's loaded with pink pepper. I quite like that. And the other one was actually one of those which we'll be launching next spring for M+, which is M+, another ingredient, which I will not release tonight, I'm afraid.
I want to know if you are now systematically going through your lab, putting Molecule with every single ingredient to see what happens. No,
I mean, I've had a couple of other interviews previous to this one tonight. And of course, people were suggesting, you know, oh, do one with rose and with jasmine. And yeah, could do. But then I like the idea that we add ingredients here, which either have an enormous importance in perfumery, and I can take them out of this old realm, out of this paradigm of how these ingredients were once used. And now we do it much lighter, much airier, much more modern, easier to wear. And this is why we've chosen these 3 to start with. And the other 2 will be very easily to wear as well. Because, you know, some people then suggested, oh, why don't you do Molecule plus tobacco? And could do, and I will try it, and I will try some of the other suggestions. But I like the idea that a lot of people will be able to find one they can really fall in love with. And M+ tobacco, I'm sure that I could make that work and someone would love it, but then, you know, 1 in 100 and all the other 99 would pick some of the others rather. So maybe one day we'll do like sort of an M+ weird edition. I can see that coming along, you know, and for the ultimate freaks who really want to go absolutely individual, or maybe even something a bit disturbing. But so far, I'm still always looking for beautiful solutions, and therefore the 2 we have picked, I think will absolutely rock, and they smell delicious and very wearable. So we just have to wait another year for that, I'm afraid.
That's fine. We're all now very, very patient. We've all learnt to be patient. And
Didn't we just? Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I mean, we last spoke, I think, I mean, it was about 9 months ago. And we were talking about the impact of the pandemic on creativity and your creativity. And you were saying that, you know, it's tough. I mean, I think it's been tough for all creative people to get that spark. So how did you get your mojo? How do you keep your mojo going?
That's a good question. I tell you what, I mean, more than anything, you know, I still have to do certain things. I mean, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter who needs looking after, and on and off with kindergarten here, more off than on. So we had to look after, you know, how do we what's the word? How do we look after her, and how can we make her day as best as possible? You know, when she would go to the kindergarten, well, that's out of her hands, and she likes going to the kindergarten. But, you know, probably more than half of the year, we, you know, Sophie and I, we had to look after her, and that was already something quite hardcore. Where before, you know, I had sort of 8 hours for myself for work in a day. That was sometimes halved and sometimes even lesser. So it's more like to get used to this, and then get back to the rhythm of having to sit down with lesser hours in a day and be not as free anymore to, you know, see when you're at your best creatively and to do your job then. Yeah. So but I mean, you know, the stuff I'm doing is either I'm working with artists on fragrance. I do fragrances for smaller brands. I do stuff for Escentric Molecules, and that's it. So, you know, it's not like I have to work on 10 different fragrances a day. I would go absolutely bonkers. And that's why I was still able to pick periods which felt good to focus on M+ Patchouli and really get into it, and for days and days do little trials and see how I can sort of bring the best out of that idea. So no, it's more I find it more depressing actually having to bear the stupidity of our government and how they dealt with the pandemic. That is something I really had a hard time with, and that just didn't bring the best out of me at times when I decided I'm just not going to do anything perfumistically these days, because my head is completely elsewhere, and maybe I shouldn't, or I really didn't want to work on something perfumistically.
And I think it was important that we weren't hard on ourselves when we couldn't do stuff, because, you know, it just, there's extraordinary times. Because the one advantage you do have, Geza, is that you do work from home. You were already working from home. So
that's right.
Obviously Anna, you know, comes knocking on the perfume lab door, and that's something different. My co-founder at the Perfume Society, Lorna, has said, shall we have a guessing game as to what the next launch might be, the next plus? So I want everyone to put their ideas for what they think, and I think it'd just be quite funny to put what you think the next one could be.
Yeah, but listen, guys, I mean, one thing is clear. If you suggest one of the two we are doing for sure, I'm not going to say yes, because that would be a bit cheap, wouldn't it?
But we'll see what kind of a poker face you have.
Okay, you have 3 shots, but not more.
Okay, 3 shots. Okay, the first 3, lavender.
I can tell you that lavender, won't even be M plus 52 or 87 or 125. No, M plus lavender is really something. I'm not even interested to see how that smells, because lavender, yes, it has an enormous history like patchouli, for example, but nah, lavender is really something I'm not too thrilled about in general.
Oh my God, they're coming thick and fast. We have leather.
That's number 2, and the answer is no.
The answer is no. And we also have sweet pea.
No.
No.
That would be that's again, that's too floral and traditional, I find.
Also, sweet pea isn't a thing, is it? I mean, it's, you have to construct a sweet pea.
Yeah, exactly. There's no natural extract of sweet pea. And no, that would be a bit too special. Again, I like the idea that I find things which we all know. I mean, God knows, yeah, people probably wouldn't know iris, but then iris itself has such a beautiful impact and an effect in fragrance that I felt I can dare to do this. But all the others will be more common and I think easily to be identified, yet just absolutely gorgeous on skin. And I love when I had my trials on these, smelling this on people, and if that, you know, brings a smile to my face, that was good enough for me. So that's why we didn't pick sweet pea or leather or lavender. I give you a fourth one if you like.
Okay, fourth one, fig.
No. Again, too singular. Fig has been done in a way where I feel you can't do fig very subtly. That's the problem. I mean, we all know the candle from Colette. You know, they started this fig trend, I think, back then with this Colette candle they had, which had an enormously huge fig note. So no, again, it's too special. I find it, fig notes are too powerful. They're too sweet and too cloying. That's not modern perfumery for me.
There is one, I'm going to give you one more just because I like this. I like this. Rain and Prosecco.
Well, listen, that's a good idea. But then what we experience when we are hanging out on a veranda looking at the sea and we're having a glass of Prosecco with it and it's raining, that is only great live. I can't bottle this, and no one could. Whoever says you can bottle that is a liar and doesn't know what he or she is talking about. So I think, you know what, some moments are great live.
Yeah.
But don't ask me to bottle it. I would never be happy with it.
No, it's also like bringing back some kind of weird liqueur from your holiday that when you get it home, it's like, it doesn't work.
Exactly. Or like we've all brought back a bottle of wine from holidays we were at, and it was great down there. And then we opened it at home, and it was like, is this corked or is this bad? So that doesn't work, and which is good. I mean, I love the way that you still have to experience moments to appreciate sensual sensations at their best only live in combination when you are there.
Yeah.
And it's happening. And the idea that anything can become digital or artificial, or that's not me.
No, I think we're all with you on that. And actually, astonishingly, we have nearly chewed through an entire hour.
Have we?
I know, it's amazing. It's gone so fast. I could happily go on for another hour. And in fact, there's a little poll there that we're doing where people say they can tell us which is their favorite. I'm going to put mine. And we will, I think, share this at some point. But I wanted to say that if people want to buy the full size, and I'm sure that everyone's going to get online after this, it's escentricmolecules.com, isn't it?
No, escentric.com.
Escentric.com. Okay, Escentric, ESCENTRIC.com. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Perfume Society, Geza. It is always a joy, but it's a triple joy tonight.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. Wonderful.
I promise next time it's in real life.
Absolutely. I would appreciate that. I agree.
Yeah.
Let's do it live. Yeah.
So thanks, everybody. Okay, so we've got the poll in. So the iris is number 1 with 55%. The patchouli is number 2 with 32%, and the mandarin is 13. So that's really interesting. Thanks everybody for doing that, and thank you, Geza. Go off and cook your onions or whatever you're doing, and see you soon. Mwah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks.
All the best from here.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye.